when treating with liars, even an honest man must lie. Today we will be continuing our examination of Affray pies and Arbor gold. We learned in our last video some deep details using Arbor gold to subtly highlight deception and lies and expose George's usage of pies to symbolize plans of action. We will look at a few more examples that drive this idea home, including the promised fire and blood excerpt. We will see Sansa in another Arbor gold entanglement, learn about the Pisswater Babe, and check out a few more pieces of pie being used for profound moments in the story. Let's get started. In A Feast for Crows, we find Sansa at the Eyrie with Peter Baelish and Sweet Robin. Sansa is posing as Peter's natural daughter, Elaine Stone. Lysa Arryn has recently been killed, pushed out the moon door by Marillion the Singer, favorite of Lady Lysa. Marillion didn't actually kill Lysa, it was Peter, but with some fine-tuning by the jailer, Marillion knows what song to sing. The Lords Declarant of the Vale have been amassing their armies in order to remove Lord Baelish, who was married to Lysa very briefly before her death. This put him in position to serve as Lord Protector of the Vale until little Robert Arryn comes of age. The Crown has advised the Lord Declarants to do nothing, and according to Littlefinger's letters to the small council, he is not concerned about them in the slightest. The first lord to reach the Eyrie is Nestor Royce, Keeper of the Gates of the Moon and High Steward of the Vale. Nestor comes to the Eyrie to hear of Lysa's death and escort Peter away if necessary. He wishes to hear Marillion's confession and Elaine's side of the story. Sweet Robin is present and weeps at the questioning, condemning Marillion for murdering his mother. Sansa, posing as Peter's daughter, Elaine Stone, nervously gives her side. Marillion has already lost his eyes and a few fingers, but he and Peter arranged a secret deal to allow the singer to keep his harp, tongue, and life so he can still sing for his proper confession to the Lord's Declarant, though Peter tells Nestor and Sweet Robin that Marillion will be thrown through the moon door. Nestor accepts this, and he and Peter settle in his solar to discuss the state of the Vale and the other lords.
We shall serve him lies in Arbor gold, and he'll drink them down and ask for more, I promise you.
Littlefinger offers the position of Keeper of the Gates of the Moon to Lord Nestor in perpetuity. The position has never been a permanent one, but Peter claims it was Lady Lysa's final wish for House Royce's loyalty. As this would put him in a stronger position than the other branches of House Royce, Nestor accepts. Peter later admits to Sansa that he bought their support with that title. Nestor then closes the gates to the other lords, including Bronzeon Royce, his cousin and Lord of Runestone. We are given a taste by Tyrion in A Dance with Dragons when he is on the boat with young Griff, who Tyrion has recently deciphered to be Aegon Targaryen VI, the supposedly dead son of Rhaegar and Elia Martell. This has given credence to the idea that this is a fake Aegon, and either a Blackfyre or Blackfyre pretender, and that Varys and Illyrio are using young Griff to ply their way to the Iron Throne. This would be quite a long game, since as young Griff explains to us, this began when there was a baby switch in King's Landing with Elia Martell to protect her son during the sack and setting him up with Rhaegar's longtime friend Jon Connington to raise the boy.
A true friend, our Lord Connington. He must be, to remain so fiercely loyal to the grandson of the king who took his lands and titles and sent him into exile. Pity about that. Elsewise, Prince Rhaegar's friend might have been on hand when my father sacked King's Landing to save Prince Rhaegar's precious little son from getting his royal brains dashed out against a wall. The lad flushed. That was not me, I told you. That was some tanner's son from Pisswater Bend, whose mother died birthing him. His father sold him to Lord Varys for a jug of Arbor gold. He had other sons, but had never tasted Arbor gold. Varys gave the Pisswater boy to my lady mother and carried me away. Aye. Tyrion moved his elephants. And when the Pisswater prince was safely dead, the eunuch smuggled you across the narrow sea to his fat friend the cheesemonger, who hid you on a pole boat and found an exile lord willing to call himself your father. It does make for a splendid story, and the singers will make much of your escape once you take the Iron Throne.
There are many who speculate the truth of young Griff. Is he truly Rhaegar's son, or is he just a young man raised to believe that? Just some young man with Velaryon features, of which there are many in Essos with those looks. Some believe that he's a Blackfyre descendant. Some believe he's Illyrio Mopatis' son with his late wife Sarah. Some believe Sarah and Varys were brother and sister, which gives Varys his stake in this player, as indicated in A Dance with Dragons epilogue. When you consider the trade for a baby included Arbor gold, it sets up speculation from Aegon's introduction. Now gather around, children. Let me tell you the story of the two betrayers in the Dance of the Dragons. These two deceivers were catalysts for the flip of the Great War and the beginning of the end for the delight of the realm, Queen Rhaenyra. The Dance of the Dragons was the fight between Rhaenyra Targaryen and her younger brother, Aegon II, after the death of their father, Viserys. This fight for succession caused war and turmoil throughout Westeros and turned the tides for the Targaryens' rule and role as dragon lords. While still living on Dragonstone, Queen Rhaenyra sought out dragon riders, or dragon seeds, which are Targaryen bastards, to attempt to claim dragons that had lairs on Dragonmont, the volcano on the island. In the end, 4 dragons were mastered by Addam of Hull, who mounted the dragon Sea Smoke, a girl known as Nettles lured Grumpy Old Sheep Stealer and claimed him. A blacksmith's bastard son called Hugh the Hammer was accepted by Vermithor, the dragon of Old King Jaehaerys, and another man called Ulf the White for his hair, or known for being a drunkard as Ulf the Sot, mounted Silverwing, the dragon of good Queen Alysanne. The group was first tested when a Mirish fleet attacked Dragonstone, but with the new dragon riders, they won the battle with only one loss, Jacaerys Velaryon, the queen's son, and his dragon Vermax. This resolved Queen Rhaenyra's ferocity and determination to win. Jake was her second son lost in the duration of this fight for the throne, but she had gained a new fire within. The victory was bittersweet for the new dragon riders as well, and they were divided in their reactions. Nettles and Addam were solemn and sad about the loss of Jake and experience of battle. Ulf and Hugh, older and more thrilled with the victory, celebrated in a tavern and drank heartily.
"We are knights now, truly." "Confound that! We should be lords!"
With the success of finding capable dragon riders, Rhaenyra's strength was unconquerable. The half-year queen and her consort, Prince Daemon, on their dragons took King's Landing and ruled from the Red Keep. The dragon riders are split up after they claim King's Landing. Addam Velaryon stays in the city, guarding the dragons in the dragon pit. It was customary to keep one dragon rider present at the pit in case of emergency, which, in hindsight, was a smart choice. Nettles rides north with Prince Daemon to seek support of the Northerners and the Vale. Ulf White and Hugh Hammer ride southwest to Tumbleton to bulk the city defenses against Prince Daeron Targaryen, the younger brother of Aegon II. Prince Daeron has the power of the Hightowers, the Lannisters, and other Westermen with him, and his own dragon Tessarion, and they were approaching Tumbleton. Once Ulf and Hugh on Silverwing and Vermithor reached the town and battle began with the Western soldiers, they made a choice that changed the game. They deserted the Queen's side and switched to King Aegon's side. We do not know what caused this change. Perhaps they thought they would receive greater rewards from King Aegon's side for making the switch, as Rhaenyra hadn't given them large keeps or lands, but rather small holdings on Driftmark. Perhaps they feared facing Tessarion in battle. Regardless, they made the choice to abandon the Queen, which became known as the Treasons of Tumbleton. They burned their own men from Dragonback and destroyed the town. Tumbleton was a large town, rich with trade and an ideal location along the river, but it was brought near to ruin with the battle and destruction of the dragons. After the battle, the two betrayers threw themselves into debauchery and drunkenness and contributed to the madness that had become Tumbleton. Women and girls were raped, lords and noblemen murdered, and their wives taken for prize. Ulf the White was always drunk, and Hugh Hammer was a brute who claimed 3 maidens a night. They had high demands for themselves. Ulf wished to have the seat of Highgarden, and Hugh wished for no less than a crown himself, which made sharing the spoils of Tumbleton a bit volatile with Prince Darren, who was next in the line of succession. They created quite a bit of enmity between themselves and the other lords for their arrogance. King's Landing was not in a much better state. Queen Rhaenyra was so angry at the treasons of Tumbleton that she called for the dragon riders Addam, Velaryon, and Nettles to be taken prisoner. Addam was a bastard of Rhaenyra Velaryon, though likely fathered by Corlys, the old sea snake, and Corlys secretly sent word of this to Addam. He was able to fly away on sea smoke just before the gold cloaks set upon him at the dragon pit. Back in Tumbleton, lust and madness had consumed the ruined city. Prince Darren and his camp, with his dragon Tessarion, were on one side of the city, and the two betrayers within. Ulf and Hugh had not made themselves very popular with their talk of being crowned and lewd behavior, but still had the strength of their dragons behind them, and with that brought support. The lords on the side of Prince Darren, including Lords Hightower, Peake, Ambrose, Roxton, and Fossaway, had come together in secret to plan what to do with the two betrayers. Their boastful natures had crossed the line. They decided it would be best to kill Hugh first, then kill Ulf. They would deal with the dragons later, or see if another dragon rider emerged. They made this plan, brought Prince Darren in on it, who affixed his seal eagerly. However, 2 nights later, on the very night this plan was to be carried out, screams awoke the city, and the outer lying camps began to burn as a dragon descended upon them. It was Addam Velaryon on sea smoke. After escaping King's Landing, Addam had landed upon the Isle of Faces in the God's Eye and met with the green men who inhabited the island. The green men speak to the weirwood trees, and Addam took counsel with them. With a determination from that meeting, he met with several river lords and convinced them to fight for the queen in defense of Tumbleton. By the time they reached the town, they had nearly 4,000 men. Their night attack was a success, and their ranks among the soldiers tense, slaughtering men before they were even dressed for battle. Ulf the White was in town, asleep in a drunken stupor under a table at a tavern during the attack. Hugh Hammer was also in town, abed with a woman. All 3 dragons were out of the city. Sea smoke bathed the town and camps with fire, including Prince Darren's tent. He died in the attack. The noise and smell of blood and fire roused the dragons. First Tessarion, who lay sleeping not 100 yards from Prince Darren when he was burned. She rose up to the sky to meet Sea Smoke. Their meeting seemed of a different nature, though. Both dragons were younger, and rather than the violent crashing and clawing and burning of the previous dragon fights we had witnessed, theirs was more of a mating dance in the sky. They swooped and soared around each other, never harming one another. But once Vermithor rose and joined in, all 3 were brought down, intertwined in wing and claw and neck. Vermithor ripped off Sea Smoke's head and died shortly after. Tessarion clung to life, but died of her wounds later that day. Silverwing did not participate in the battle. She had circled overhead and watched from above, descending only after the carnage had ended to lay beside Vermithor and her cousins. She was the only surviving dragon of Rhaenyra's original arsenal. The dragon rider Hugh Hammer was caught off guard with the battle, and Lord John Roxton found him before Hugh was able to get to Vermithor. He shoved his Valyrian steel sword through the betrayer's belly and ended his false hopes for a crown. Ulf the White slept through the entire battle and woke to find himself the last dragon rider with the last dragon. More prideful than smart, he thought he could be the choice to wear the crown. The following morning, Lord Hobart Hightower called upon him to meet and hash out the details of his crowning, bringing with him a cask of Arbor red and another of Arbor gold. He gifted him with the gold first and kept the red in hand, But something in his demeanor made Ulf question Hobart, and he asked for the Lord to enjoy the gold with him. Within an hour, Ulf went to sleep, to never again wake up. Lord Hobart tried to retch up the poisoned wine, but it was too late, and will always be remembered for his loyalty to his fellow conspirators.
No man ever feared Sir Hobart's sword, Mushroom says of him, but his wine cup was deadlier than Valyrian steel.
Here are a few more examples of Affray pie being used to give us displays of action and intent to really reinforce the use of this literary device.
At Joffrey and Marjorie's wedding, Joffrey drinks the poisoned wine and then cuts open the pigeon pie immediately. He begins to choke as the pigeons fly out. The story of the Rat Cook comes from the Night Fort, the largest castle along the wall. It's said to be haunted, and many creepy occurrences happen there. It's been closed for about 100 years due to the cost of upkeep and the lack of night's watchmen. According to the legend, an old Barrow king came to visit the castle with his son. He somehow offended the cook at the Night Fort, and the cook killed the prince and cooked him into a pie. He served the pie to the king, who loved it so much he asked for a second helping. When they found out the prince was killed and eaten, the gods were so offended they turned the cook into a rat and cursed him to eat his own babies until the end of time. The gods were not offended at the murder or that the cursed pie made the king a cannibal, but that the cook violated guest right and killed the prince after they were given bread and salt of the castle. This calls to the Red Wedding and the Freys' murdering of Robb and Catelyn after they were given guest right. They were not served pie by the Freys, but the Freys will be served some pie in return for their actions. You don't want to offend the old gods this way. Rhaegal was brother to King Aerys I. He was the prince of Dragonstone. He was said to be small and meek. He choked on a lamprey pie and died. Not a huge impact on the story, though his younger brother Maekar became next in line of succession and ultimately became king and Aegon V's father, the fourth son of a fourth son. One might consider his death was simply there to create a storyline for Maekar and Aeg. In A Game of Thrones, Peter Baelish tells Ned that he's been dining with Tanda Stokeworth, who hopes to create a marriage for her daughter Lollys with Peter. She's been serving elaborate and delicious dishes to entice him, and tonight they'll dine on suckling pig and lamprey pie. Peter has been in it for the food, stating he'd rather marry the pig than Lolly. Davos survives the Blackwater and makes his way to Dragonstone with the intent to kill Melisandre. She, of course, saw this in her flames, so Davos was imprisoned in the warm cells beneath the castle. At first he thought he would die there, still feverish from his wounds and exposure to the elements before his rescue. But the maesters attended him and brought him back to health, and his jailers take pretty decent care of him. Davos is fed well, and though the jailers won't speak to him, he names them for the meals they serve him, porridge and lamprey, for the pie. If you recall, earlier Wyman Manderly reported to Cersei that he had Davos prisoner, and Cersei ordered his death. To feign his loyalty, he had Davos killed and his head and hands mounted on the city walls. For this, Cersei returned Wyman's heir Willis. Once Willis is safely returned to White Harbor after his captivity at Harrenhal by Gregor Clegane, they have a great feast where they serve lamprey pie. Under the noise and joy of the feast, Wyman secretly discloses the truth of his plans for staying loyal to the Starks and the North, and his farce to the Freys and his mission for Davos. "Drink to my boy's safe return, Willis, my eldest son and heir. He's home. That is the welcoming feast you hear. In the Merman's court, they're eating lamprey pie and venison with roasted chestnuts." In Season 5, Brienne and Pod are seeking Sansa Stark. They stop by the inn at the crossroads to rest and run into Hot Pie, who serves them kidney pie and makes friendly small talk with them about the importance of the gravy. Brienne tells them they are looking for Sansa Stark and swore an oath to her mother to return her to Winterfell. Hot Pie is nervous and tells them they don't serve traitors, but later finds them as they're saddling up to leave. Hot Pie tells them he knows Arya, and last he saw her, she was heading up to the wall, dressed as a boy. This is the first time anyone has heard that Arya is alive since Ned's death, which is very substantial news for Brienne. So I've made here some handheld pies inspired by Joffrey's pigeon pie this wedding. I couldn't find any local free-range organic pigeons in my area, so I settled for a small chicken for this recipe. Meat and vegetable pies are pretty simple, and they follow a pretty basic formula. So just to make it a little bit more special, I made the pie dough a cultured pie dough using my homemade sourdough starter, and the result was like a super moist, kind of tangy crust. I also used tallow in the dough, so that gave it a little bit of sweetness out as well. So it was just kind of a nice way to add a little complexity to what might otherwise amount to a pretty bland chicken pot pie. I'm planning on doing some more fermentation recipes in the future, including kombucha and yogurt at home, so let me know if you think that would be cool or boring. For the filling for this pie, I used bacon, turnips, leeks, and mushrooms. Added chicken. I used heavy cream and broth to make it sort of a creamy consistency, pretty thick though. And then I had cut my pie dough into smaller portions, so I could just take a little dollop of the filling and pinch the dough closed and bake it for a more portable version of Joffrey's wedding pie.
We've seen several examples of Arbor gold being used to hide deception in plain sight within the story. It's a fun, symbolic tool that George has used to bring focus to areas of the story that we might otherwise skim over. With the addition of its use in Fire and Blood, in yet another deceptive situation, really puts the nail in the coffin that it is a tool that George uses to invite us to look deeper at the scene. The details of small council meetings and counting coppers may not be exciting or action-packed, but when we break it down and focus on each little part, it is littered with manipulation in every discussed subject, all while they're heartily drinking Arbor gold. The wedding of Ramsey and Jane Poole is not a wedding we normally focus on in great detail, especially when we've had weddings like the Purple Wedding or the Red Wedding to contend with. But when you look at the guests who are present, and the wrath that comes with their side stories, there's a lot to unwrap under that pie crust with jolly old drunken Wyman. There's actually just as much going on in White Harbor and at the Pink Wedding as any of the other big events in this story. We really hope you've enjoyed our analysis of pies and Arbor gold. With the new season coming up, please look out for us making appearances on Johnny Be Crazy's channel and Lady Wolverton's Den. And as always, please subscribe to Geek Chat 1 on YouTube and Facebook for tons of nerdy fun. Please like and subscribe to see what we're cooking up next. We're trying to get 2 more videos out before the new season starts, so hit the notification bell to get it while it's hot.